creating a persona for your aspirational mindset. Okay? The question here is, who do you need to become to embody a mindset of confidence, of strength, of optimism, growth, tenacity, the kind of person who makes lemons into lemonade, right? For me, my single word is captain. Like, I'm the captain now. Like the guy boarding Tom Hanks' boat in Captain Phillips, look at me, I'm the captain now. And when I conjure the vision of what it means to be the captain of my ship, I embody a mindset that says, irrespective of the size of the swells, irrespective of the winds that blows or don't, I am the captain of this ship. And guess what? I've just come through a season of feeling overwhelmingly unmoored, right? I was pushed off to sea. And when I think about the person that I have to become to embody the mindset I need to handle the swells that are coming my way, it's captain. I mentioned this in February's course. I like to show off my tattoo, but a ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. That is a John Shedd quote. I got this tattooed on my forearm as a mantra. This is my advanced mindset, right? This is my mandate to embrace the chop, to believe that I was built for the choppy waters, that I, as a boat, was not meant to stay inside of a harbor of my safe, my security, my familiar, but that I was in fact built for the waves that exist beyond the jetty. It's this constant reminder that the life that I want exists outside my comfort zone, and that the only way that I can evolve into the person I want to be, right? For myself, for my family, for someone who's proud of himself when he's by himself, is by pushing myself beyond what's easy and familiar. Or when unfamiliar chooses me, it's seeing that choice beyond my control as something that has a means to a greater end, a greater me, a stronger me, right? On the other side of whatever challenging conditions end up being thrown my way, those conditions are who I'm becoming. Good or bad, come at me, bro. I'm the captain. I am the captain. Come at me, bro. Right? When I have that captain persona on, I am okay with the swell. I'm okay with the wind. And the thing is, and it's hard because nobody wants to invite challenging conditions, but it requires that I test myself every day to embrace the journey into the unknown, even when I get scared, even when it's disappointing, even when it doesn't go my way or on my timeline. It just demands that I am willing to stand back up and do it afraid and learn from my mistakes and inevitably keep getting up. Because that's what happens when you push into new spaces. That's what happens when you grow. It's not if I'm gonna get knocked down again, it's when. It's not if you're gonna get knocked down again, it's when. And when you do, who do you have to be to handle that with grace, with tenacity, with grit, in a way that helps you learn, grow, and become because of getting back up? The funny thing is, I am not good on boats, which is strange because I got a tattoo about boats on my arm. I'm not a lover of open water, and yet most of my coaching, a lot of what I write about tends to be about these analogies of being at sea, because guess what? That's how I can connect best with this persona that I have to embody to engineer the mindset and stand in a posture of resilience that sets me up to handle whatever life is dealing me next. By nature, I actually end up feeling a little bit more comfortable when I am anchored and close to shore. I have lived most of my life as someone who prioritized certainty, liked the idea of predictability. And in that, I've opted for it even at the expense of becoming, right? I've chosen it even though it ended me in a place of being stuck. I've rationalized, like I'm sure plenty of you have at some point in your life, that I was okay just being okay, or that it was safer to stay in something I knew, even if it was suffering that I knew, than put myself out there and challenging myself, challenging the status quo. And what's interesting with mindset is I think that we all fall victim sometimes to a harbor that we are anchored to. right? I think that there are things, be they the stories that we've been told, the societal constructs that we live inside of, the people we surround ourselves with, the fear that governs our willingness to cling to that suffering that we know. All of those things that either exist as one of two things. Either they're an accelerant that's going to push you to grow, get back up faster and become, or they're an anchor that constrains how we become and how we inevitably stay stuck. And so my hope in part in this conversation today is to challenge your historic relationship with the allure of the dock, right? The historic appeal of the anchor, right? Whatever yours may be, because I believe that we all have them. I certainly have them, right? I've got the stories. I've lived inside the structures. I've given weight to the fears and been in the wrong kind of community that affected my mindset and impacted the way that I could be resilient and get back up when the heat showed up, when things got hard, right? My tattoo, it's that argument that we're all designed as a ship for higher seas. And so I want to encourage you to believe that in the persona that you decide to put on, so that you don't find yourself, like I have in times when I am not proud of, made trade-offs that staying in the harbor, that avoiding the choppy waters reduced the possibility for growth and ultimately left me unfulfilled, right? You can't give in to fear. You can't disregard your instincts. You can't fall into traps where you don't believe in yourself. It requires assuming this persona. So rather than convincing ourselves to settle for good, you got to believe that you deserve great. What is the persona that you have to put on to unlock, to make available to you that kind of greatness? I believe with 100% certainty that every single one of us was created with immaculate, deliberate, intentional design, given unique talents. You and only you, you are one of one out of billions of people on the planet now and the billions that lived here before. Only you have had the experiences that you've had. Only you have the gifts that you have. And you now, because of those things that are uniquely instilled inside of you, have proof of the qualification that you can handle whatever comes next, if you choose to see it as such, right? I have had plenty of times where I found myself in seasons of stuck, and it was in those seasons where I couldn't connect to this persona of captain. I couldn't conjure the imagination for believing enough in myself to push toward my fear. Like boats built to weather the storm, I'm going to argue right now that you, like me, have every single thing that we need inside of us to handle the discomfort that comes from living into our calling, right? That intentional design, that deliberate set of pieces that live inside of you. They were placed there as a part of something that was a mandate to live out that purpose. When I get asked the question, a simple question, right? How do you, Dave, define success? My answer is simply this. Success is doing every single thing I can every day to honor the intention of my creator, right? I was created with purpose in mind, with intention. So are you. So the way I can embody a persona that might unlock the honoring of that intention is how I describe success. So our first piece of homework is this. What persona do you need to embody to honor the deliberate design of your creator? What character do you need to step into so that your mindset and your intention are aligned? Right? Name your character if it helps, right? Beyonce's got Sasha Fierce. I mentioned it. Bowie had Ziggy Stardust, right? I'm the captain. Who are you? What does that version of you do in the face of adversity? How do you react to disappointment? What do you do when something doesn't go your way? Can you see it as happening for you instead of to you? My challenge for you in homework in this first section is to create a personnel file for your persona, a dossier, and get as detailed as you possibly can with who you're going to step into every single day to honor the intention, the deliberate design of your creator. We're going to talk about values, establishing a foundation for what you stand for, right? Identifying the non-negotiables in your life. They frame who you are. They frame how you hope to feel the day, experience your week, how you hope to show up in the world. But if you don't know what you stand for, if you don't know what your values are, you'll have no hope in actually focusing in on or creating discipline around the life that you hope to build, to enjoy. When I'm doing coaching, I did this last time, I'm gonna do this probably every time. For some reason, I tend to turn to sailing as a storytelling device. I'm not a sailor, I'll be honest, but there is something about this idea of leaving a safe harbor from which we often find ourselves tethered to for the life of personal freedom, for the fully exploited potential that might exist beyond the jetty. The attempt, as I say, to honor the intention of a creator who very deliberately puts specific skills, gifts inside of your being. All of those things happen when you push into choppy water. So when I was thinking about how do I talk about values, I was actually drawn to a story I'd heard about something called ship killers. Let me explain. Ancient seafarers, when they were plotting their courses, originally it was by stars. I'm sure that they used some kind of geometry, maybe even depended on Dwayne Johnson from Moana. I'm not sure, but they often were looking at some North Star that kept them moving in the right direction, that regardless of the conditions of the sea, they knew to value so that they could make it on their journey. And as time progressed, maps ended up coming in. And so now instead of stars, they're looking at paper, and on the maps, there were particular things to take note of that were called ship killers. Rocks, islets, breakers, reefs, wrecks, obstructions, spoil areas, right? I said I'm not a sailor, so I had to actually look up what a couple of those things are. I didn't know what an islet was. I don't know what a spoil area is. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is, if you're going to head out to sea, damaging your hull or bending your propeller or anything that might keep you as the floating boat from floating, that might make it run aground or stop floating, that's not ideal. That's not a value, right? The value that any skipper has is to keep this vessel sailing, to do it in waters that allow it to traverse the sea safely and in as uninterrupted a way as possible as they make their way toward their destination, that North Star. And so the interesting thing for me about values is that core values are obviously things that help you clearly identify what you stand for in a way that designs guardrails around what you do, right? Follow that star. And maybe more importantly, what you don't do, right? Don't sink that boat. So the ways that you navigate and progress through the journey of whatever ends up sitting ahead for you is balanced in some ways around what you do consistently, discipline and focus, and making sure you're avoiding what you don't do so that you don't run aground. For me, I've got 6 core values. I'm not sure that there's a right number of core values, but I'm going to ask you as a part of homework to make sure that you can name the things that you personally value in your life. My values, centeredness, right? The idea that I am working to live, I'm not living to work. Advocacy, right? Showing up as an ally to anyone who may be marginalized or may not benefit from the privilege that I do. Growth, that I'm striving every day to be better than I was yesterday. Optimism, choosing positivity, hope in what's to come, the good that can exist even inside of hard times. Service, just wanting to put on the cap of servant leader in any and every aspect of life, and responsibility, the idea that I want to try and act with integrity. And those things for me are the North Star. Those are the things I hope to live into every single day. These are the things that I've signaled to anyone in my life that would be classified as an accountability partner, BRENDON among them, to be on the lookout for if I start veering off course. Right? If I know that my work starts to compromise my ability to show up as a dad, or negativity in hard times starts to paint a pessimistic vision of my future, then I'm compromising my ability to reach my goals. I'm doing something that comes at the expense of my value, and I might, because of that disconnect, undermine how I actualize my actual calling, right? So I know why I'm on this planet, right? I'm on this planet to change it, to have impact on it. Right? The purpose of my creation is a reflection of the values that I hold. And I will argue they need to be a reflection of the values that you hold. And so I want to keep my family a priority, advocate for others, chase growth, see the good, serve well, and do it in a way that creates consistency between my ambition and my everyday actions. And if I drift away from my core values, right, I run into a ship killer. I slow at best or sink at worst my pursuit of becoming who I'd hope to be. So for you, homework starts with a question. And it's a very simple one. What do you stand for? What do you stand for? Unless you know what you stand for, unless you know your core values, you don't have a sense, you don't have a handle on what it is that you're going to need to do. So you have to set that North Star, right? Create the guardrails that reinforce what you do and what you don't do. Be clear about who and how you'd hope to show up as every single day. And then you give yourself the chance to actually be that person. Answer this question. What do you stand for? Create a list of your core values. What attributes would you need to have present every single day in your life, all the time, to have anyone who's witness to you living your life know without a doubt what it is that you stand for, right? Knowing what you stand for is going to be a big part of how we help cast the vision for where you're going, where you're going to focus your energy and how you'll deploy your discipline to actually get there. The topic of confidence. It is a good one for all of us because confidence is a required ingredient for everything that we are hoping for in the pursuit of the life we're trying to create inside of this year or any year. And also, change challenges confidence. It's going to come with these questions of what might happen in these new unknowns. It's going to trigger our anxiety, our worry of what if, our worry of how long. It requires better question asking around what can happen, right? What kind of preparation is required to be ready, fortifying our confidence with the kind of planning that will have us preempt the thing that might get in our way long before it does. So I want to try and walk you through a little framework around what might happen, what can happen, and what will happen. I want you to take the time and write a letter to your fear. What are the things that you fear in this journey of growth that you've chosen? What are you worried about in relationship, in finance, around your health? What are the things that are triggered insecurity-wise, imposter syndrome, whatever it might be? I made a list of my fears, and then I asked these two questions. Which of these fears are actually real? And which of these fears can a plan be created for to address the warranted fear? The interesting thing in going line by line through my 46 things is that many of the things I thought were, of course, yes, totally ridiculous. 80% of them gone. But the other 20%, they were warranted fears, right? Those fears were real. And I believe that the role that those fears were playing was a prompt to ask questions on how I could best prepare to do it scared, but ready. The ability to formulate the kind of habits and routines, the circle of support, the resources I'd need to ready myself to, yes, confront my fear. The fear was not going to go away, but to do it in a way that changed completely the way I felt courageous and up to the challenge. Let's dive into what might happen. Epictetus said, man is not worried about real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about the real problem, right? It's an idea that was reinforced by Seneca. We suffer more from imagination than reality. I want you to grab a blank piece of paper. I want you to draw 3 circles on the blank piece of paper. This represents the things that we worry about, the things that can happen, and the things that do. I have filled it out for you so that you can fill it out yourself. The whole pie is the way that our brain processes every single thing that could possibly happen on this journey of becoming. The smaller circle is the list of things that actually can happen, because our mind is so crazy, It will have us worrying about things that could never happen. But that smallest dot, those are the things that actually do happen. And when you can see it against the backdrop of how much we afford, the weight of worrying about everything with how much actually happens, it just affords you a confidence to dismiss a little bit of the rhetoric that voice in your head is trying to sell you about why you should be worried in the first place. Now, that in and of itself, that's not going to make your anxiety go away like magic. There is a next step. And I don't know what role anxiety plays for you, but I will tell you, for me, anxiety is providing me information. It's intel, right? It's a trail of breadcrumbs in my life to a place where I do not yet have clarity, where I don't yet have a solidified plan. And in the ambiguity that exists in not yet having a plan, I am afforded an opportunity, because of the message relayed by anxiety, to dive into and consider how I might become just a little bit more prepared for this piece in my life. It has fundamentally changed the way I think about anxiety. Thank you, anxiety. I hate that I've become grateful for you, anxiety, but in fact, when it presents itself, it's just trying to help me create clarity in a part of my life where there is ambiguity. All right, I want you to take a new piece of paper. I want you to write down, like I have written down here, what might happen and what can happen. The homework for you is to take the letter that you've written to your fear. And on the left side, right, what might happen, write any of the things that might happen and put them on that left-hand side of the page. On the right-hand side, the things that can happen, write those down and put them on the right-hand side of the page. Once you have every fear that you attribute to what might happen, I want you to ask yourself the same question that I did. Is this fear real? Is it actually something that can happen? Is it actually something that is highly likely to happen? And if the answer is no, can you have a conversation with that fear and release it? Can you connect to confidence in a way that might allow you to cross it off the list? If you need to, could you write that fear on a piece of paper, crumple it up in a ball, and symbolically, as you let it go into a trash can, release it from the weight that you would have to carry in keeping it a part of you in the journey from where you are to where we're going, right? The next step, right, for any of the fears that still exist after you've tried to release the ones that are not real, is how do you take the limiting belief that you currently have about your ability to handle this fear, this thing that might happen, and turn your limiting belief into an empowering belief around why you are completely qualified to handle it. So I'll give you an example from my list. On my what might happen list, I couldn't let go of my anxiety around, what if I put myself out there and fail, right? I'd had a very successful job inside the Walt Disney Company for 17 years, the last 7, where I'm the president of distribution, surrounded by the greatest intellectual property, the best teams. I was always an accomplice to success, not solely responsible for it. In the work that I did in the Hollis Company, working with my partner and wife, Rachel, building something that was built around, again, great intellectual property, it was not all on me. And here I am leaving a harbor that was previously safe for a harbor where I know I will grow, and it all falls on me. What if I put myself out there and I fail? So I ran through an exercise that I call positive, negative, reframed, okay? When you take the things that might happen and you're able to create 3 columns of the positive outcomes, the negative outcomes, and the reframed outcomes of what might happen if these things were to pass, then you get a chance to actually see all the scenarios that could unfold, right? For me, I might be seen as underqualified to do this work. I might embarrass myself publicly. I might be triggered to reach for negative coping mechanisms when I feel badly about it, right? Those were my limiting beliefs. And in establishing those limiting beliefs up front, as I went through the positive, negative, and reframed outcomes, I made a list of every single thing that could happen if I put myself out there and failed, right? All the good things that could happen, hey, I'd learn. All the negative things that would happen, I might be embarrassed. And anytime I wrote something that was negative, I was then challenging myself to ask, but is there good that could come from this negative scenario that I'm believing in? Is there a way for me to see that negative as happening for me instead of to me? And once I went through the positive, negative, and reframed outcomes, I was able to go back to my limiting beliefs. And I was able to challenge each of them in a way that made them empowering, in a way that fortified me with the confidence to believe that I am perfectly qualified. And so my limiting beliefs became, I'm already qualified to do this work because of the experiences that I've had and the willingness to be vulnerable and share this journey with others. I changed it to, the only way that I'll acquire skills necessary for the audacity of my life is if I can envision the embracing of failure as the vehicle that's going to help me grow. I reminded myself that I've already made it through 100% of my failures. And I've done so in a way that has every single time left me stronger, having learned more and growing because of them. Okay, so that's the work for you. I want you to take your fears, create this exhaustive list of every single thing that can happen, positive, negative, and then reframe anything that's negative. And do some work on the limiting beliefs that you have going into the exercise and how, knowing now that you can turn any of the negative scenarios into something positive, that it might afford you this permission to have an empowering belief on why you are perfectly qualified for this life you are hoping to live.
This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, that was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.